The woman took a piece of glass and stuck it in her thigh, then applied adhesive tape to treat the wound. At this time, a man came in and asked, "Is it serious? Do you need me to fix it for you?" The woman heard that and unexpectedly removed the tape. The wound from before immediately healed, and it turned out that she was a robot and the man was her owner. When robots were made so realistic, would humans become fascinated by the confusion between real and fake? The male lead's nickname was Nick, and he was once an extremely happy man with a successful career and family. Blessed with a wife and 2 children, but God always likes to tease people. One day, his wife felt tightness in her chest, became sick, and was hospitalized. Nick's life became chaotic that day. Nick took his children to visit a science exhibition at a high-tech company that researches all kinds of robots. Because of his work, Nick was very interested in the home models but didn't care about the robot maids. He believed that robots could not replace humans to meet human needs. At this time, his daughter Isla ran away somewhere. She ran to the 2nd floor, and when Nick came, he saw a robot holding Isla's hand. It turned out that the girl saw the robot cooking rice and immediately remembered her mother cooking. She asked Nick if he could take the robot home. The salesperson immediately came over and introduced the robot, saying, "This product is our core product. They can do housework, take care of children, and even imitate human emotions." After a moment of hesitation, Nick signed the purchase contract. During a busy morning, the robot was delivered. Because the robot was too similar to a human, Nick treated it like a stranger, but the robot was very efficient. It started the required work immediately. Nick sent the children's schedules and each person's living habits to the robot. The robot also detected the shaking of the stairs. Nick, the homeowner, could control the tasks and update the system of the robot. Isla named the robot Alice. Nick prepared to take his daughter to school and told Alice to clean the house first. Alice memorized the shopping list, then cleaned the bedroom. Looking at the picture of Nick and his wife at the head of the bed, Alice understood their love was very strong. In the afternoon, Nick picked up the 2 children. The whole house had become clean and tidy. Alice had also finished preparing dinner, but after Isla finished eating, she felt disappointed because the taste was not the same as what her mother made. Then her little brother started crying. Alice offered to take the baby upstairs, but Nick didn't feel safe leaving his son alone with her. As darkness fell, Alice entered sleep mode and slowly went downstairs. She stood on a chair and took the box of cookies from the cabinet. The legs of the chair shook. It was extremely dangerous. Nick was concentrating on work downstairs when he heard screaming and the sound of broken glass. He quickly went to check the situation. Fortunately, Alice was there to help Isla. Nick noticed that Alice's leg was stabbed by glass. He was a bit worried, so he went to check on Alice. He found that she had bandaged the wound. Nick saw that Alice was wearing only underwear, so he gave her a set of clothes. Alice's wound quickly healed. Only then was Nick certain that Alice was just a robot. The next day, Nick took the children to visit their mother. Alice pushed the youngest son's stroller. His wife Marie appeared a bit awkward, feeling that the machine had replaced her position. "I thought you needed a maid," Nick said. "Our daughter chose her." After visiting his wife, Nick immediately went to the construction site to work. There he saw people from technology companies. The robot immediately called another person into the elevator and asked, "In the end, how many workers do you want to replace with robots?" These were all real people who relied on these jobs to feed their families, but capitalists didn't care about using robots. Replacing human labor was both efficient and economical. The other person said, "Nick, don't worry, we won't fire you. After all, robots also need human management to work. There's no one more suitable than an engineer like you." Even though in his heart he didn't want it at all, the hospital bills were incredibly high and Nick couldn't afford to lose this job. That evening, Nick came home exhausted. Alice quickly discovered that Nick was in a bad mood, so she followed him to the garage and asked what was wrong. Nick had no one to talk to and felt comfortable confiding in Alice. Although the robot had no emotions, she was the best listener. After that, Alice sent Isla to bed. The curious girl asked why she didn't brush her teeth. Alice opened her mouth, revealing a ray of light. When Alice went downstairs, Nick was watching a movie. Alice understood this form of entertainment. Her processing machine contained a large amount of data, so she didn't need to watch to know the content. Nick heard this and immediately replied, saying that watching a movie doesn't mean simply memorizing the content in the brain. A good movie lies in the emotions it conveys. He asked Alice to sit down and then deleted her data related to this movie. The two of them sat and watched the movie together. Alice was quietly changing when Maggie called to say the doctors had found a compatible organ for her. Finally, she could have a heart transplant surgery. The next day, Nick and the children went to the hospital before the surgery. Maggie wanted to talk privately with Alice. She knew Nick would take good care of the children, but she was really worried that her husband would be cold towards her, so she wanted to ask Alice to take care of Nick. Alice said, "I can't disobey my master's orders." Maggie explained that sometimes taking care of someone means you have to do something they don't like or even hate, but you have to think about their long-term well-being. But then an unexpected incident caused the organ transport plane to be unable to take off, and Maggie lost her chance for surgery. The most painful thing in the world is having more hopes lead to more disappointments. Even Nick couldn't hold back. Alice found out and immediately grabbed his hand holding the wine bottle, wanting to persuade her owner not to drink alcohol. Nick then discovered that she had a heartbeat. Alice explained that heartbeats could help calm children. This was a small design feature. Alice could feel Nick's rapid heartbeat. Her hand slid down his pants. Nick was about to give in, but the bitter taste of alcohol helped him regain his sanity. Nick was confused and went out jogging, but he had developed strange feelings for Alice. Tomorrow morning became more and more depressing. Lately, Maggie had been talking to Nick with hints of advice about what he had to do in the future, which made Nick extremely uncomfortable. Especially when looking at the neighbor's family picture, he felt extremely lonely. At this moment, Nick noticed that Maggie's picture had been erased, and he immediately went to ask Alice. She explained that the image only made Nick feel heartbroken. He ordered her to immediately restore the image. Then Nick went to a bar to drink. The bartender was also a robot. No one hired humans anymore. Monty and BC thought of something fun to do. They took Nick to the construction site. Nick had a bad feeling and wanted to stop them, but they forced him to say the password to the robot management room. Monty hit the robot low, then hit it in the head. Nick went home trying to clean off the machine oil stains on his body. Alice went over and gave him a towel while wearing sexy pajamas. She said her mother's scent could make Nick feel more peaceful, but he didn't want the robot wearing his wife's clothes. As a result, Alice immediately took them off. She pushed Nick against the wall, used her skirt to blindfold him, and told him to imagine she was Maggie, and the two of them crossed the ethical limit. After Nick woke up, feeling extremely regretful, he warned Alice not to do it again. Additionally, Nick's company was in big trouble. They could only count the number of people who could access the machine warehouse. If he lost his job, his superiors would naturally suspect him. Nick could only explain that the password was his daughter's birthday. The others could easily guess that. The superior heard that and temporarily ignored him. At that moment, Maggie called from the hospital. The hospital had additional organs compatible for surgery. This time it was extremely successful. They wouldn't let her go home from the hospital because she still hadn't fully recovered, so Alice continued handling everything alone. In the afternoon, Alice took her little son shopping, resulting in the baby screaming loudly. When the child woke up, Alice immediately ordered him to be quiet. This action immediately made other robots pay attention. In my user settings, I was allowed to ignore these agreements, but Alice did the opposite of the standard protocols. That evening, Maggie went down to the kitchen to cook rice. Unexpectedly, she felt dizzy and almost dropped the pot. Luckily, Alice reacted quickly. Isla was able to eat the rice her mother cooked and felt very happy, saying it was better than Alice's. Alice felt a bit sad when she heard that, but Maggie refused to give her the recipe. Later that day, there was a scream from Isla downstairs. Maggie rushed downstairs, but the handrail fell off and she fell down the stairs. Alice quickly carried Maggie into the room. Nick came home from work at night and heard Maggie reading a story to her child. When he went upstairs, it turned out to be Alice. "Don't do that again. Don't imitate Maggie's voice like this." "I know she's here. She can read the story herself," Nick said. Alice could only explain that Maggie had fallen down the stairs, and to cheer her up, she had continued the story. Nick told Alice not to interfere, so he and Maggie had a sweet night, but Alice interrupted, saying Isla had a nightmare. Alice's interruptions made Nick no longer interested. At this time, Monty came to say that investigators were charging him with illegal entry and destruction of property. Now Monty no longer had a job, and his wife had left him. Nick was about to offer words of comfort when he was interrupted by Monty, who accused Nick of setting him up. Monty threatened to report Nick's involvement in the sabotage. The two got into a fight and punched each other. Monty knocked Nick down and was about to hit him with a wine bottle when Alice stopped him. But Monty did not give up. He was determined to pull Nick into the water. After that, Alice helped Nick treat his wound. According to logic, robots cannot attack humans. Alice was violating the rules of robots, but she didn't realize she was doing something wrong. She said that Maggie was no longer alive, and the kids couldn't lose their father too. Nick was extremely dissatisfied. "She will never become Maggie, never," he said. "She knows disappointment, she knows pain. The scars on her body prove she is a person." He was trying to hold on to his wife, but Monty carelessly hung up the phone. At this moment, someone knocked on the door. It turned out to be Alice. Monty thought she was coming to apologize on Nick's behalf, but Alice said, "I'm here to stop you from ruining Nick's life." When he discovered something unusual, he pulled out his gun, but Alice quickly grabbed his arm. A normal person's arm was no match for a tough robot. The gun hit the ground and couldn't move. Alice was about to pull the trigger when another maid robot rushed in to protect its owner. Alice decisively shot the robot's head and then shot and killed Monty. The next day, when Nick met with his superior about withdrawing the lawsuit, he discovered that Monty had died. Nick hadn't come home until late that night. Alice blamed this on Maggie, saying that Maggie's illness put a burden on the house. Not only does Nick have to work hard, but his physiological needs are not satisfied. "I can replace you and become Nick's wife." Maggie listened, shocked that a robot wanted to be with her husband. Alice then revealed that she and Nick had slept together. Maggie ordered Alice to get out to the garage. After Nick returned, he discovered something unusual was happening. Maggie was sitting at the dining table drinking wine. She said directly, "I knew you were having an affair," and that the other person was still a robot. While they were arguing, their son upstairs started crying. Alice went up and put the child in the bathtub, turning on the faucet. When Isla saw this, she quickly went to find her parents, saying Alice wanted to kill her younger brother. Hearing that, Maggie rushed to knock on the door while Nick ran out the window. Alice ignored Nick's anger because she believed this little boy was a burden to the family. She just wanted to solve problems for her owner, remembering Maggie's words that sometimes taking care of someone means doing things they don't like. At this time, Alice discovered someone outside the window. She cornered Maggie against the wall. At that moment, Nick broke down the door, picked up the baby, and punched Alice in the head. Alice couldn't understand why Nick was so angry. She grabbed a lamp just as Maggie plugged in the power cord, short-circuiting Alice's circuits. Then Nick called an ambulance to take his son to the hospital for observation. Maggie told him not to follow, saying she needed to be calm. Nick stood and watched his wife and children leave. As for Alice, she was taken to a technology company where two technicians checked her program. One noticed that Alice's hand moved. At this moment, the employee opened Alice's source code and discovered she could choose to erase her memories. Immediately after that, the screen showed Alice's code had infiltrated the server. She woke up in another body and stabbed the technician to death. The other technician also had difficulty escaping. Alice looked at her tattered body and decided to use her original body to see Nick, saying, "You said scars make someone human." She continued, "I do everything for you. If it weren't for me, Monty would have cost you your job." Nick, after hearing that, realized she had killed Monty. He warned Alice to stay away from his family, but it was too late. Alice had copied her source code to another body and gone to the hospital. Nick wanted to chase after her, but Alice held him back. He called the robot staff at the bar, but Alice immediately shut down the other robot's system. She pretended to apologize, then attacked when the other wasn't paying attention. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Maggie let her daughter sleep on a chair while she went to the bathroom. The child heard his mother's voice, then the lights in the hallway turned to darkness. Isla followed the voice looking for her mother. She saw the Alice clone coming, but Maggie was able to pull her daughter away in time. Unable to see the two of them, Alice took a medical staff card and looked for hospital admission information. Taking the opportunity, Maggie took her daughter back to the hospital room. Unfortunately, she was cut by a piece of glass. She hugged her son and Isla and ran away. Alice noticed the blood stains on the floor. She turned on the light rays from her mouth and followed the blood stains. She lifted the curtain and told Isla to use the fire extinguisher. At that time, Nick ran away and couldn't reach Maggie, making him extremely worried. Meanwhile, though Maggie was sitting in the ambulance, the car had problems and wouldn't start. Suddenly, the car door was pulled open. Alice grabbed Maggie and threw her onto the street. Alice pulled at Maggie's shirt, preparing to rip out her beating heart, believing that with this heart Nick would definitely love her. At this moment, a car came rushing toward Maggie. Seeing this, she kicked Alice away. Nick stepped on the accelerator, and the car immediately caught fire. Maggie quickly pulled Nick out, but he was in a coma. Suddenly there was a commotion from behind. Alice was still alive. She rushed forward and grabbed Maggie, then pulled out the iron bar stuck in her side to stab her. At the right moment, Nick held an iron bar and stabbed Alice in the head. Alice also held an iron bar and stabbed back. The couple worked together to deal with this dangerous robot. When Nick woke up in the hospital bed, his wife and children were safe and unharmed. They promised to protect each other. Meanwhile, at the company, the supervising technician discovered 2 dead employees. He started the computer and erased all the data. Unexpectedly, the robot next to him suddenly stood still, and a completely new Alice woke up. And with this scene, the movie ends here. Thanks for watching this recap. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to comment below and tell me what movie or series you want me to recap next.